Welcome. My name is Tarissa Spoonhunter. I'm a Native American and enrolled member of the Northern Arapaho tribe and a descendant of the Blackfeet tribe. Dos, Hinanana Niehi Bikina Hisse. The presentation you are about to watch is titled Water, Glaciers, and Conservation on the Wind River Reservation. Our three speakers will discuss water as a precious resource for the economic, cultural, and environmental health of tribal life on the reservation. Thank you for watching. I'm Dr. Tarissa Spoonhunter. I was raised on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation next to Glacier National Park, but I am a enrolled member of the Northern Arapaho tribe. My father's side are Arapaho, so I've been with CWC for 5 years, so in a sense I'm kind of also learning as I go about my Arapaho side, my Arapaho way of life. But I was raised in a very contemporary family that was very highly educated. They were ranchers, but also we were very traditional. We still practice our ceremonies. Again, my name, Natos Iksakiapi, translates into Holy Beaver Woman, because the beaver is the central bundle for the Blackfeet people. So at age 9, I was given this name. And even though I didn't quite understand the whole bundle system, the responsibility, of being a beaver woman, I knew there was some status to my name. And so throughout my life, I grew up wondering, how can I ever live up to that name? I know that name means a lot within my tribe. And so as I got older and learned and went to the beaver ceremony, which is when the waters are high, which is usually June, and then the bundle is put to rest for the winter, which is usually in October after the first snow. And so my life was set at age 9, that I was going to be someone that my people could rely on, someone that would share, be kind, be generous. And I'll tell you, it's a hard life. Because in the society we live in the Western education system, it totally contradicts, what I'm expected to be as a Blackfoot woman. As Western education, we're told to get an education, become wealthy, build your retirement, right? And for me, going to school meant I needed to go into a field that would benefit my people. And so at first I started out in anthropology, very interested in cultural preservation and language preservation. And then I took a federal Indian law class. And now, believe me, that's the most depressing class for any American Indian, and my students, but it's also something that wakes you up. And so from that class, that I didn't take until I went to graduate school. I didn't read my tribal treaty until I went to graduate school. The treaty is the foundation of this government-to-government relationship. Tribes hold 25% of the U.S.'s oil and gas on tribal lands. We're a big stakeholder. Water is very critical, not only to tribes, but to this nation. And believe me, water is bigger. Water is bigger than Indian casinos, Indian gaming, oil and gas. I shared a story earlier where I lived in the desert, going to school for my master's and doctorate, and it's a major resource there. And for me, being raised as Blackfeet, you pay attention to the bigger picture, what's going on. And I was, was like, how is this the desert? And then you drive 10 miles and there's a golf course. But that does not make sense to me. If we're worried about water, why is there a golf course in the middle of the desert? And so, I paid attention, but in the back of my mind, although I was getting a doctorate degree, I could compete with any academic in my field. I also had a responsibility to my tribe. And that role, like I said, guides me, brought me back to the reservation, brought me back to Central Wyoming College. And one of the reasons I chose Central was because it was next to a reservation, and I could live on the reservation and still work, in higher education. And so for me to be able to share knowledge, because it's a black book, knowledge is attained through the transfer of knowledge from generation to generation to generation. And a lot of times, in Western education, we're told to hoard knowledge, to be the professional, so they have to pay you for your knowledge. But I always knew that whatever I learned, whatever I found out in my education, somehow I'd have to translate it, interpret it for my people that may not have had the opportunity to take the Depression Federal Indian Law class. So when I wrote my dissertation, I proposed to my committee, I said, well, I need to write something that not all my people even graduated high school. We shared at the last event, some of our old men, our elders, went to 5th, 7th, 8th grade. So when I needed to write, it was something that someone in middle school could understand. And of course, in academia, I had a whole professor say, no, you can't do that. And I said, well, then they don't need me on my committee. And I found someone that would work with me, and I was eventually able to write something to help my tribe camp in Glacier National Park for the first time in 2009 in over 100 years as a Confederacy. And that was asserting their rights on land that was ceded, asserting those treaty reserve rights. Water is a reserve right. So this map that we have is the 1863 Shoshone treaty lands, which we all know this is Jackson area. So, and that's the current, Wind River Indian Reservation. So I just kind of wanted to give a little perspective because, of course, when I'm driving through Arizona, I came up to the interstate, cut across, and I'm like, how did they lose Jackson? I wanted to know, And so, I looked up this map, and I was like, well, okay. So, when we have our ceremonies, we call upon the water beings, the sky people, the animals of the land, the plants, the rocks, so forth, with the humans being the last to be called upon. Until all have arrived and taken their place in the lodge, without the environment and its beings, we could not have this ceremony. And so I shared this opening ceremony at the Harvard think tank when Obama became president. And we had many different federal agencies there. And the feedback that we got was from lawyers, from scientists, from watershed managers, National Park Service, BLM, Bureau of Rec. And it was like, wow. I never really thought about how my work impacts these beings, whereas I was always put, my human nature first. And so with that, I kind of want to set the tone for our presenters that they'll each present, 10 to 15 minutes, and then at the end, we'll ask questions. You can direct your questions, specifically to one of the presenters. If it's a general question, I'll call upon someone that may best be able to answer. We do have other people here in the audience that from CWC that would be at a request if there's an answer that we can answer. So our first presenter is Mitch Cottenoir, who is the tribal water engineer for 9 years. He also worked in the oil and gas mineral industry for over 30 years. So in a sense, he worked on both sides of water issues. And so there's no one, that, is more fitting to kind of discuss and set the tone, for water issues facing the Wind River people, the Shoshone and the Arapaho. So with that, my question for Mitch is, what are the current issues the tribes face with their water? And what are the priority uses for the Wind River Indian Reservation? So the floor is
Thank you, Tarissa, and I'd like to thank you for attending tonight's program. As she said, my name is Mitch Cottenoir. I'm an enrolled member of the Eastern Shoshone tribe. I'm also of Cowlitz Indian descent from the state of Washington. I'm a product of the Indian boarding school system. My mother was sent to Indian boarding school in Salem, Oregon, when she was 8 years old. And she met my dad there. They married when they were just out of high school and relocated to the Wind River. I was born and raised in Riverton, lived all my life in the Riverton and Wind River Indian Reservation. I'm a graduate of the University of Utah with a degree in mining engineering. I spent the first part of my life working in the oil and gas industry and minerals extraction industry. I worked for probably 20 years as a private business owner and operator. Since then, about 12 years ago, I became involved with water issues on the Wind River Indian Reservation. I was appointed to the Wind River Water Resource Control Board by the Eastern Shoshone Business Council. And since that time, I worked on water issues on the reservation. 9 years ago, I became the tribal water engineer, and I operated staff on the reservation that our duty is to manage and administrate the water rights on the Wind River Indian Reservation. Just a little more background. I was appointed to the Wyoming Indian Affairs Council by Governor Geringer when he was governor of the state of Wyoming. And then I served for 8 years on the Wyoming Water Development Commission. I was appointed to that position by Governor Friedenthal. To answer the question, first, what is our biggest concern on the reservation with regards to water is to have an adequate supply to satisfy the needs on the reservation. We have 15 beneficial uses of water on the reservation that were identified in the water code. The Shoshone and Arapaho's water code was put together in 1991 as a result of the Bighorn adjudication. As I said, according to that water code, we're in charge of administering the water rights on the reservation. Probably our biggest concern right now about the adequate supply is the lack of storage. As you know, our growing season and irrigation season on the Wind River is from May to October. And years ago, when we had adequate snowpack, the runoff occurred at the same time as the growing season. But whether you agree to it or not, due to global warming, our runoff occurs early. Most of our runoff is already in Boysen Lake by the time it's time for us to utilize it. Therefore, storage is our only solution. We're working with the Wyoming Water Development Commission right now to site storage sites, one on the Big Wind side and one on the Little Wind side. That additional storage will give us the amount of water that's going to be able to satisfy these 15 beneficial uses of water on the Wind River Reservation. All of those uses are interconnected, and they're based on adequate supply. We have the Tribal Water Engineer's Office and my board, the Wind River Water Resource Control Board. We've been working closely with Senator Barrasso's office and working to obtain funding to rehab the irrigation system on the Wind River Indian Reservation. The Wind River Indian Reservation is one of 16 Indian irrigation systems in the West that are owned and operated by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. When we started working, there was about $1,600 million in deferred maintenance on those 16 irrigation projects. The Wind River is about $90 million. Since 2012, working with the Wyoming Water Development Commission, we've been able to do about $11 million in rehabilitation on the system. By doing rehabilitation, we hope to increase the efficiency of the irrigation system, which would improve the supply of water for each one of those uses. A lot of the things that we've been doing on the rehab have drastically increased the efficiency of the diversion structures, which in essence allows us to dry up the stream if we wanted to. Whereas the old structures, they were in such bad repair that enough seepage would go through to take care of things downstream. So what we've done is we've started to incorporate fish passage into our structures. It allows aquatic species to go up and down the stream as it can. We've put in fish screens. This is the fish screen on the Ray Canal. It's the largest fish screen in the state of Wyoming. We partnered with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Trout Unlimited, and other partners to do this. Our other structures are, you can see this is one of the fish ladders. Prior to the installation of fish ladders, there were these barriers on the river where fish couldn't migrate up and down the stream. We have identical structures on the Ray Canal and Coolidge Canal system. This is a fish ladder on the sub-agency canal. That's for sauger. Sauger aren't jumping fish. They need a different system that is a steady incline. So that's what we have here. This is the fish ladder on the other side of sub-agency. We have we're looking at future fish passage throughout the reservation because, like I say, we utilize the fish ladders to bypass enough water to ensure that there's enough water for domestic use. There's enough water for cultural use. There's enough water for religious use. Domestic water is an important thing. In the Ethity area, many times, and towards the end of the year, they are dependent on surface water for their drinking water. And it's not uncommon for them to have a boiling order put into effect on them. That doesn't occur in too many places in the state of Wyoming. So we're using our fish ladders to ensure that there's adequate supply of water throughout the reservation for all of our people. As I say, storage is our one solution that we're looking at. The little wind side of the big wind, like I was telling you, has a growing season from May to October. But it's not uncommon for a systematic drought to occur on the 4th of July. Can you imagine your ranchers and farmers having adequate water for their irrigation for only probably 1/3 of their growing season? Hopefully we can alleviate that. Like I say, all of our beneficial water uses on the reservation are connected. If you don't have enough supply for one, you don't have enough supply for any, because none of them are held of priority over the other. Irrigation is held in equal weight as cultural use, domestic use. And we're hoping through storage and through improved rehabilitation of our irrigation system that we can be able to provide adequate water supply for our tribal members and also the members of our irrigation project, which includes tribal and non-tribal people.
I'd like to introduce Jackie Klancher, who is a professor on environmental health, ice researcher on glacial melt, and many, many other projects. Her and I are a team on the current export project of microbiomes across the state of Wyoming. So I'm delighted to invite Jackie to speak on her partnerships within the Indian Reservation and how her research can build partnerships and that sharing of knowledge. You know, we're all facing, you know, water quality, quantity, global warming. And so for the first time, you know, this conversation happened, and today we even said Jackie's volunteered to come out and present, you know, specifically to the water board to begin to have those conversations just like we are having here today. So, here you go.
Thank you, Tarissa. And thank you for having me. Yes, I'm honored to be here this evening. I am not from the Wind River Indian Reservation, and through my communications with Tarissa and Mitch and Gabe and various avenues from the classroom to being colleagues to sharing a vested interest in natural water or in natural resources and water, I've been invited this evening and I'm delighted to be here. As this image reflects, I am involved in water research, not always in flowing water, although that is part of the world I encompass. I've been at Central Wyoming College for the past decade, always teaching a variety of science courses, but although the courses themselves have changed over time, there's one content piece that I never lose, and that's water quality and water quantity, and its role historically and contemporarily, and how we're looking to manage that in the future in a changing world. Whenever I look at water, I could say, absolutely, it takes a village. So if Tarissa brought me in with the question of, what work am I doing around the Wind River Indian Reservation and how do partnerships play a role? Every move I make, every person with whom I communicate, every student I recruit, every communication to seek funding or to seek permission to travel, whether that's U.S. Forest Service permission to travel or even going back historically, the support of the tribes in traveling in terrain that was historically Shoshone terrain, to feel good about the work that I'm doing requires communications. And if you look at where roughly I work on the Dinwiddie and the Gannett Cirques, along the spine of the Continental Divide in the Wind River Range, this is a no-joke location. We are where it all begins, along the Continental Divide of the Wind River Range. And the waters that we assess through glacial ice examination or surface water flow into the Missouri, the Upper Colorado, the Pacific Northwest. And this isn't my students' water. This water belongs to the Wind River Indian Reservation. It belongs to the nation. As a watershed state, I think you have responsibility to take care of the resources, and it's nothing that any individual themselves can conquer. As Tarissa was mentioning, a lot of our attention is dedicated to the Dinwiddie Cirque itself. The Dinwiddie is the 4th largest glacier in the wind, very, very key. If you talk to the BLM, and you heard it here from Tarissa as well, in respect to providing water for the Wind River Indian Reservation and Fremont County below and the basin below, it's integral. A massive frozen water reservoir that we are losing before our eyes. So while I'm not from the Wind River Indian Reservation, I have good friends and colleagues who are interested in what I'm doing. And if you look where we're positioned, right in there, it becomes pretty obvious. Water flows downhill where you see the Wind River Range. Oopsie. Oh, now I've done it. Just feeling all clever with the laser. The Continental Divide, water flowing west, water flowing east. The water that we study in the heart of the Dinwiddie flows directly downhill and is the water that Tarissa is talking about that's not just for drinking, but for cultural purposes and shaping the destiny of the people to come. What's the status of the glaciers and the winds? The same status of most of the glaciers in North America. They are going. There's no arguing about whether they're going. We never had a hypothesis of, well, I wonder if they're growing or shrinking. Glaciologists can look at the fern line on the Dinwiddie Cirque and on the Gannett, and each year, we can measure it quantitatively, and we do, but we can see the fern line changing. And because so much of what I do is focused on education and educational partnerships, I certainly engage my students in quantitative monitoring and assessment of the glacier, but some of it can be seen with the eye. I wouldn't say for fun, but out of intrigue, if we look here, and we look here, you do not have to be a glaciologist or an expert. You just have to be able to see. That's a massive difference. And even if you accommodate for time of year, et cetera, you can't attribute that to a yearly snowpack difference. This is a massive and monumental difference over time. And if each one of these glaciers, this is just one, the Dinwiddie, the Gannett, the Grasshopper, the Sourdough, there are frozen wet reservoir banks. It's like having a savings account. You can have the money all at once and buy all the candy you want, or you can have it in the bank and get the trickle effect. And that's what we're doing and have been doing historically with glacial water, is getting the trickle. But the question now is, well, what happens when they're gone? There's no more trickle. If you spend the savings in a crisis, what do you have for the next crisis? So you have a problem like this, you rally the team. You want partnerships? Partnerships are built on people. They're built on relationships I build in the classroom with my students. They're built on relationships with colleagues. They're built on colleagues and professionals who have an interest in water and natural resources. So at CWC, I am shameless. I will woo and lure and try any student from any department, whether it's outdoor education and leadership. You guys want to go on the glacier? Or whether it's hydrology, hey, you want to get a job in water? You need to be with me. Whether it's my archaeology, anthropology, and geospatial science students saying, hey, I know you're interested in this, but can I twist your interest to bring you in the mountains for a little something different? And you gather the village. So the sky may not be falling, but the ice is melting. This tarn gets bigger every year at the toe of the Dinwiddie. For now, it's creating almost its own momentary storage, the tarn at the end of the Dinwiddie Glacier itself. But as temperatures rise in the alpine, as runoff happens earlier, as we lose the reservoir that feeds it, in time, this too might be empty. And if we recall the first map, this surface water isn't flowing to nowhere. It's flowing into people's homes, it's flowing into people's showers, it's flowing into people's cultural beliefs, it's flowing into their bathtubs, it's flowing into their mouths. It's what keeps us alive. From a more hydrological perspective, if we look at it nuts and bolts, Dinwiddie Creek, flowing into the Wind River, flowing into the Bighorn. You heard Tarissa mention Bighorn River and our Bighorn water rights, and we know historically there's a big battle that's been waged over water because water's life. So who do we partner with in this world? Anybody with an interest in what we're doing who'll support our students, who'll support the meaning behind the work, who'll support getting our students in the field. And I think every level of partnering on a project like this is critical. I certainly want to give a nod to two groups, Wyoming Injury and EPSCoR Wyoming, that show up on the left because they're both funded by National Institute of Health and National Science Foundation. And money's not everything, we know that, but it brings together people in a playing field sometimes. If you have resources, Tarissa and I can partner EPSCoR and INRI projects from National Institute of Health and National Science Foundation because we have a pool of funds that we're sharing and we're looking out across our student horizon and those partnerships and going, how can we bring as many people as possible into this mix? And how can we encourage them to invest in the work that we're interested in? That's stipends, student internships, scholarships. We work with some other partners that might not be obvious. I cut my teeth in risk mitigation and wilderness travel at the National Outdoor Leadership School. And to this day, they support our students in the field with gear. And I know where to look when I need some trained mountaineers to supplement our team. So we have a solid CWC team that comes from Knowles, but we bring those folks in as well. And in the future are looking at another research project in East Africa where I'm currently hoping to move Gabe to in January. The Forest Service, this is a wilderness area, no motorized, no mechanized, fully permitted. I hustle for that permit each year and I covet it, but I also keep in mind the people who were there before. This is the U.S. Forest Service land now, and that's to whom I maintain compliance with my permit. But I know there were people there much, much earlier than just the Forest Service and my team. NASA Space Grant Consortium is a big supporter of student education projects and internships. And I guess at the heart of it all are the relationships we forge with our students. It does take a village. I work for a college, an educational institution. It means nothing if my students aren't on board and engaged and fired up about what we do. And of course, we're interested both in the water quantity, to which Mitch referred, and the water quality. How much is there, and is it good to drink? In the realm of quantifying, we look at both glacial depth and glacial area. Geophysics. Although intuitively we could look at the glacier and go, boy, this thing's shrinking. It's not enough for students you're training to be scientists and publish papers. They need to go further than that, at least in the realm that I swing. So they work with ground penetrating radar. They do GPS perimeter mapping. We tried a new project a couple of years ago in kite aerial photography. It was a total bust. It is never windy on the Dinwiddie when you need it to be windy, and it is too windy when you want a little bit of wind. Does it matter if you're forging partnerships with students to teach them meaning behind geospatial techniques? Not necessarily. All the data we get is not always fantastic, but some of it is. Some of it is publishable at this point. We look at black carbon, how much particulate matter is on the glacier, and what does that do to influence how quickly ice melts each year. And in the realm of E. coli and water quality, actually looking at us to some degree. We're in the Dinwiddie. Are we practicing appropriate waste management and doing our part, not just to collect data, to contribute to the scientific field, but to leave no trace and leave the area as good as we found it? And happily we can say, maybe to my students' chagrin somewhat, we have never been able to get a positive sample. The water at the headwaters of the Dinwiddie is currently very, very solid. We do macroinvertebrate work as well, and we are very pleased with the water quality there. And I suppose my students, I say to their chagrin, because who wants negative results every year? But I kind of do. So we got cut off a little bit, but crossing the divide between cultures, between managing a resource, between leading the classroom and engaging students, it takes a village and it takes teamwork. And I'm honored to be part of this team in approaching water management issues that affect the nation, and more specifically, close to home, the Wind River Indian Reservation. So thank you.
So our next speaker happens to be my brother. My uncle's son, Gabe Spoonhunter. He is a student. He was a state of BC student. We drag him back in probably every semester we can. Hopefully he'll get that degree. But he started out in outdoor leadership that has taken him across the U.S. He's served at the AmeriCorps Vista and is currently working for Ancestral lands. He's created a team that has worked not only in the Southwest, but he's now kind of heading that team and creating other teams throughout Montana, Wyoming, to bring tribal youth, not necessarily youth, because we do have some older college age, students, and bringing them out into traditional lands, ancestral lands. One of the things that, in this partnership was when I remember meeting with the Lewis and Clark Forest Service, and you guys have probably seen Badger to Medicine in the news lately, but I served on the Badger to Medicine committee. And at one point, the tribe was so frustrated with the management of Badger to Medicine. They said, why don't you just let us take care of the trails? Because that's our traditional land. We hunt, we gather plants for food and medicines. We want to make sure that the wildlife, can stay in this area, with no more roads built in, motorized vehicles contaminating the environment. And so I'm happy to say that Gabe's crew goes in and does the work that one tribe had asked for. Gabe Spoonhunter.
Well, hey, that law sitting up. I'm Northern Arapaho and Oglala Lakota. I'm from the River Indian Reservation and Pioneer Indian Reservation.
My Indian name is Red Thunder, and here in Grand Teton National Park, they actually call me Red Thunder. In the Conservation Corps, they call me Red Thunder. And it's really awesome that I get to use that name in a lot of the work that I do in working with a lot of different youth and everything, because that really solidifies us and our culture within the outdoors. And with that being said, I also started out in Grand Teton as an ancestral lands intern with Grand Teton National Park. And my boss and my supervisor are currently in the room from that intern, and that's Megan Colai and Millie Jimenez in the back of the room, right over there. It was an honor to work with them. They gave me a lot of different opportunities in working with various different parts of the park, and doing a lot of that was very eye-opening, and it just all kind of started with me just asking my NOLS instructor. I went on a NOLS course. I asked my NOLS instructor, how can I get paid to be in the outdoors? And pretty much that's how this all came to be. And sometimes I don't like my job because I have to go to DC and talk to politicians. It's not that fun, but I love to travel, so it's a great opportunity. And the thing is though with that too is like, we really advocate for our Native American programs of Bureau of Indian Affairs, with the National Park Service, and so on and so forth, talking about, just reporting back what it is that we do. We do a large range of work, working with youth, a lot of our youth who go through our program, and also thanks again to Megan and Millie, because they head up a lot of our Grand Teton crews our Grand Teton youth crews that come in here, and I don't really have to worry about anything. I could just kind of like come in, check in, and then just leave. I don't really do much other than just do a couple of demonstrations and some traditional talking the language with our youth, and then also just doing other traditional games and other things like that. And that's where it comes in, where the Ancestral Lands program comes in. And with the training that I got with the Ancestral Lands program, it is revitalizing our culture, but also revitalizing and what our impact and our traditional knowledge that we use in the outdoors was before contact. This is actually in Yellowstone. We do a lot of traditional, we remove invasive species that are detrimental to the environment and that are not originally there. And who better to know what is invasive and not than the people who've been here the longest. So, and then the other thing is too, we get to collect native plant species that we use in both traditionally in our medicinal uses, but then also to reintegrate them into areas where somebody probably put in a road or something, and then we take that road out and then pretty much put those same native plants back into that area. And then we also clear off social trails, just like a regular trail crew, doing a lot of different work like that. Oh, did the same thing. The other thing is too, is we do a lot of different kind of fields reduction and also just clearing out trails, just like a regular conservation corps. But then the other thing is too, is we actually take some of these trees and replant them in other locations as I really need them. So in that sense, it's a lot of, instead of us always just going through and killing trees, we're just relocating them to another location where they can thrive and everything. And even some of these trees, like the pine needle and so on and so forth, or blue spruce, there's so many trees actually we use as for traditional medicines and some things help get the sniffles away. And then we get to do a lot of fun stuff. One of the major things that I really love to do is with our ancestral lands is taking them to historic sites. It's like the Battle of Little Bighorn, places as to where there's a lot of stories that really connect us with our people from long ago. That is actually on one of the Great Lakes. It's to the northern Arapaho people. So we all got to kayak out there. And with that, there's like stories and everything that we have elders tell them about what has happened there and so on and so forth. Just about a lot of the traditional knowledge that is passed down and the stories of an area, why that place is called this or that, so on and so forth. And then of course, my crew has to be my crew. This is my first adult crew, and the guy actually climbs up on the tree and puts up a number 1 to make sure that everybody knows that that's my first crew. And it's something I'm really proud of. 3 years ago, I really worked really hard to get these conservation corps crews for our Native youth, because looking at the Ancestral Lands program down in Southwest Conservation Corps, where I received my training, them working with their language, them having their youth going out and doing a lot of the traditional knowledge, that is really what inspired me to do this for our people up here. Yeah, and it was really great to know that people down south were doing that, and pretty much I just stole a model and came up here and started doing work. So, and then the other thing is too, is just another significant thing about the Battle of Little Bighorn site is that I can actually trace both of my ancestry on my, I can trace the Spoonhunters back to Crazy Horse's Ledger. I can even trace my mom's side. I am a descendant of Chief Red Cloud. So in that sense, knowing that both of my families were here at one point in time is really powerful and meaningful for me. And then the other thing is too, is that there was actually a warrior who died there by the name of Red Thunder as well too. So that just kind of like brings all these kind of emotions. And then a lot of the work that I really have to do is really show people our traditional games, show people, show the people show a lot of non-natives of the importance of what are the things that we do that I can actually teach. There's some things that I can't teach and there's some things I can't talk about. But in that sense, the things I can, share that information with them. And they all get a kick out of it and they all turn around and really find out why it is that we have our certain protocols, our certain rules. And sometimes they get upset about it too. But either way, it is that knowledge that's being passed on and shared. There, just like my sister was saying, we have to share that kind of knowledge as you talk about things. And then, of course, I have to give downtime to my crews. So having them do their traditional crafts, having them do dream catchers, beadwork, or kind of like what I'm wearing right now. Keeping those things alive with our traditional ways is really something very powerful that we have to maintain. That's me up there doing a traditional weaponry class, using atlatls, ram horns, bows, and spears, just a lot of the things of how we used to hunt before we had guns and all the other stuff, and talking about hunting with our young men and a lot of other things with that as well. And then over here, talking about the importance of our animals, so how we utilize them from their hides and their antlers and their bones, to make our regalias, to make our gears of war from a long time ago, and then also making our clothing, and our drums and so on and so forth. But more of that traditional knowledge that is just passed down, and that's pretty much my entire story.
And so this is just the opportunity to share our perspective. Like I said, it's ongoing. We still have a lot of concerns with water, but really to show that, water is transgenerational, important, not only to us, but, we're also respective of our surrounding communities. Because as Native people, we can't be greedy when it comes to resources. We can't be stingy when it comes to water. And I kind of proposed this, to someone at one point, just as an example, if the shoe was on the other foot. And before I say that, I'm gonna share, someone came up to me in the last session and it's like, don't tell my name, but I was the federal judge for the Bighorn case. And I felt like I didn't know enough about American Indian water rights. And so I called my predecessor, and he said, the Indians own all the water, and then you'll be able to do your job.